Hello and welcome to the African Utility Week studio. I'm Ashley Taron, Content Editor of ESI Africa. Joining us today we have Thava Govender, Group Executive Transmission and Sustainability and Risk at Eskom. Welcome Thava.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
How have you been enjoying the show so far?
Very good. A lot of meeting, networking, a lot of good panel discussions. I think focusing on the right issues.
Do you think it's going to be a good year for the power sector?
It has to be.
Thava, I'd like to just to briefly ask you. You recently took over the sustainability and risk side at Eskom. How have you found that transitioning into that role, and have you experienced any challenges?
The transmission side has been part of the business I sort of knew fairly well in Eskom, having been in Eskom for quite a while. Very operational. Sustainability was a challenge because it's not very operational, it's more strategic. And I think the things that I found very challenging in sustainability is issues like climate change. Having come from a generation, and when you get into sustainability, you see all these challenges where we as South Africa and Eskom have committed to the world in terms of COP21 that will reduce our CO2 emissions. So sort of having stepped onto the other side, you can see the changes the country and Eskom has to make, and coming out of a coal background was very challenging for me to say, well, we have to decommission coal-fired power stations and issues like that. So very, very difficult, but very challenging, but very enriching. I think climate change is one of the biggest challenges we're going to sit with in this world. So having got involved in that certainly is educating me more, because I think you never stop learning. The other aspect of sustainability is the environmental side, certainly with the atmospheric emissions, challenges we sit in the country. While we still talk about particulate emissions in this country, the rest of the world battling with CO2, so we're a bit behind in that. I think the water challenges has also been a big issue. So it's been very challenging, but very, very, I'm enjoying it, and it's been very fulfilling.
Okay, no, fantastic. So speaking about the water, coming from predominantly coal background, and now looking at the different types of alternative technologies that we have, where do you see water playing its role here, especially within the South African energy mix?
So a lot of the energy diversification is based on trying to use less water. So some of the new power stations we're building, for example, Medupi and Kusile, is all dry cooled, which means we don't have wet cooling, which means you don't have these big cooling towers where you see condensation rising most of the time. That's where the evaporation, the water gets wasted. So dry cooling is actually water being used in a closed cycle. So that minimizes the water that you use. So a lot of the technology is based on that. So I think water is going to be a big challenge in the world, but specifically around South Africa, I think we're beginning to see that the rainfall season that we had now has been very poor. We've also played our part in Eskom. We've got two hydro stations, Van der Kloof and Garib. We didn't run Garib for quite a while last year, and we still hardly run it. It's our issue to say we will manage without it, but we'll use it in case of emergencies. So there were months that we never used it, even though we had an allocation to run for it. So we're very conscious of that. We put a lot of programs at the power stations to make sure we conserve water, but it's a big challenge. I have this biggest fear. I think a lot of people say that the next world war is going to be fought over water. So it'll be the big challenge about that. I think in Africa that's one of the biggest challenges. But I never realized, I was at the World Economic Forum for Africa in Rwanda. I never realized a country like Sudan has such massive water resources that they're now building pipelines to connect the east and west of Africa to transport water from Sudan. So there's big potential for energy in Africa around hydro. And I think that's a potential we should exploit. But I think water usage certainly by the energy sector is going to certainly diminish.
So you say that there's definitely an opportunity for hydropower. But when we look at climate change, which is becoming a fast reality, and especially if you look at South Africa with the drought that we've recently had, what is the long-term feasibility of hydropower?
Well, in South Africa, I don't think we're blessed with some of the natural setups we have in other African countries. We've got very small, I think, areas where we can potentially develop hydro. Whereas we've got the very big potential in Africa. For example, in Inga can power the whole continent, 100,000 megawatts. But it's been carrying on for 10 years. Hopefully this year we will see the first signs where there's a contract going to be awarded. In Ethiopia as well, tremendous potential for hydro. Ethiopia is going to double its capacity from 2,000 megawatts to 8,000 megawatts on hydro. So hydro is seen as a big issue, in terms of reducing our carbon, our CO2 footprint. So unfortunately in South Africa we don't have that, like I said. But what we can do is, if we can interconnect with the rest of Africa, we can certainly get that hydropower, which is also far cheaper than some of the conventional power that we've got.
So looking at interconnection and the various projects which are on the go, either still in its infancy stages or which are nearing completion, how do these projects benefit the East African power pool and the Southern African power pools?
See, that's one of the fundamental questions we battled with in a discussion at the World Economic Forum, and even here it was in a panel discussion. We have the Southern African power pool, where South Africa belongs, and you got the East pool, you got the West pool, you got the Central pool, and you got the North pool. So I personally don't see that integration. I spoke at the Africa Energy in Thava about, I think, late last year or beginning of this year, where we spoke about an interconnected Africa grid. And that's what we're pushing from Eskom side. If you look at Africa, South Africa has got 44,000 megawatts. The next biggest is Egypt. Egypt, whether it's Africa or Middle East, is debatable, but it's classified as Africa. It's got 30,000 megawatts. The next is Nigeria, that's got 12,000 megawatts installed, but of late they only can use 2,000 megawatts. So there's a lot of power available, but there's no interconnection to actually benefit the rest of the population of Africa. We see ourselves in South Africa as Eskom as the export power hub in Africa, because we're sitting with that. I mentioned in the panel yesterday that from 10 o'clock in the evening till 5 o'clock in the morning, we have to drop load by 10,000 megawatts. Peak is around 33 and we have to drop down to 23. So there's 10,000 megawatts that can be potentially exported. We cannot do that because we don't have, the infrastructure is not built there. You've got load shedding in Zambia right now, 24/7, 8-hour rotational. And we're supplying as much as we can in off-peak between 10 and 5, but our lines are all constrained. So we need to have developed that infrastructure where we can probably export more power. And these countries also run their very scarce hydro during that period. So our issue is saying, why are you running the hydro during that late night, early morning, where we could supply your night minimum for you? Because the Kariba Dam dropped as low as 12%, and we were trying to help them out. It's picked up now to 28%, but it'll take years before it actually picks up. So this interconnection is very important. Even in the South African power pool, we've got a country like Tanzania that belongs, but Tanzania is not even operationally connected to South African power pool. There's no line linking them to all the other countries in the South African power pool. The line is only being built now. So I think there needs to be a big focus on this interconnection. Besides, the biggest benefit there is obviously the poverty alleviation. If you have all these interconnectors, it actually drops the price of electricity in that country by between 15 and 17%. So, but it takes political work.
So if we can see these very visible benefits, why is it taking so long?
I think it's political will. You need political will and you need visionary leadership. I think a lot of the countries were focusing on their own countries. South Africa has got its own battle with supply and demand. The fact that now we are going to probably enter a surplus environment in the next 5 to 10 years we are trying to see how we can help the rest of the continent. So we are now developing heavily into transmission lines and interconnectors with other of our neighboring countries. So we're also trying to link the various power pools together. And I think that's something that an organization like the World Economic Forum can link everyone together. We're hoping that when it does happen, meet next time, that this topic about interconnectivity is actually one of the key topics that needs to happen.
So I'd like to move more into the youth side and skills development. You were awarded an Eskom bursary in the 90s, is that correct?
Yes.
And you are now chair of the council of the Eskom Academy of Learning.
Yeah. So one of the things that really I have a passion for, obviously one passion is safety. But beyond safety is about education and empowering the youth. This world, or when we talk about the continent, 50% of the African population is below 25. 70% is below 30.
It's high.
Very high. So the future of Africa actually lies in the youth. And where we certainly as organizations like Eskom, we need to get this young population interested in areas like maths and science. So in South Africa, we have an organization called the Expo for Young Scientists. It's called the Eskom Expo for Young Scientists. Eskom is the main sponsor. It's basically where we encourage all students, but we start off in the school level, where we get grades 6, 7, 8, where we give them projects to demonstrate anything around, from agriculture, from projects around water. It's about science and technology, energy efficiency in the medical sciences. And we have like 33, 35 regional competitions throughout the country. The winners from that compete in our international competition, Science Expo in October. And from there we choose the best, and they attend the International Science Fair, which is normally held in America, either in Los Angeles or Phoenix. So Eskom is the main sponsor. We certainly want some of our colleagues in the energy industry to also sponsor. Where it helps the young students is that these companies also sponsor them bursaries, actually maybe paying for their tuition fees in matric or in grade 11 matric, and also in university as well. So we're very passionate behind that. I'm very passionate about that. You need to be there to understand these young kids and the stuff that they come up with. They may not revolutionize the energy industry or come up with amazing work, but it's a starting of getting them interested in maths and science and making maths and science fun.
No, well, it's fantastic to see this type of investment in the youth, especially since they're going to be the ones driving our future.
Yes.
But thank you so much for joining us. It's been wonderful to have you.